Hey everybody, we'll give it just one more minute for folks to come in. So continue your socializing and networking, please.
Ben, did you get all the things that do it? Can make like announcements and things?
Yeah, they're up here.
Oh, okay. Same announcements that have been made over some stuff. I think everybody, they're gonna sit up and.
Cheers. All right. Hey everybody, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Got some housekeeping notes to get everybody super excited in the afternoon. It's going to be like your fourth cup of coffee right here. I know you guys have already heard all these. Just going to run through these really quick, so bear with me. Please silence your phones. Photography is permitted. We're okay with you guys taking our picture. Just put a good filter on it if I'm up here, please. And Photoshop all you want. Recordings of the program sessions will be available on the meeting website following the annual meeting. ABRF social media policy is that everything can be shared. Just use hashtag ABRF 2026. Let's hold questions until the end of the session, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. When you ask questions, please come up to the microphone, but don't incriminate yourself. Download the ABRF app. If you haven't already heard that 20 times, this is your 21st time. Please do that. And then you will receive an evaluation survey at the end of the meeting, so please feel free to fill that out so ABRF can make improvements on what they need to do. So we're going to talk about asset tracking today. Before we get started, just wanted to say a big thank you to Varian, Jay, Nate, the camera guy, and the rest of the technical team. Can we give them a round of applause? Without them, we'd all be sitting in the dark. No one would be able to hear me, and we'd be staring at blank screens. So thank you guys for doing what you do and keeping us up and running. Obviously, thank you to ABRF for hosting this event and letting us get up here and ramble on about asset tracking. Thank you guys in the audience for attending, especially at 4:30 at the end of the day. We will try our best to keep you awake with this exciting topic. And then thank you to my wonderful co-presenters as well. So we have Julie Auger, who is the Executive Director of Research Operations at the Salk Institute. Mary Gauvin, who is the Service Centers Director of Core Facilities at the Office of Research and Economic Development at Montana State University. And I am Ben Wright, Director of Research Core Development within the Office of Sponsored Programs at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So we're going to talk about asset tracking today. We're going to share various perspectives, but we really wanted to kind of frame our conversation around three questions. Why? Why is asset tracking important? Why do we care about asset information? Why do we go through big lengths to gather asset information and summarize it down into usable metrics? How do we gather that information? How do we compile all of that information from a bunch of different sources and put it into a usable format or into a database that we can access and use reliably and accurately? And finally, what? What do we do with that information? What do we do with that information once we have compiled it? Who do we show it to? What do we do with it? And what kind of improvements or processes do we put in place once we have that information? So a quick overview of the institutions that are represented here. We have Julie from the Salk Institute. They have 7 core facilities and 250 assets. We have Mary from Montana State University with 12 core facilities and about 320 assets. And I'm from UNC Chapel Hill. We have about 140 core facilities with about 1,100 assets at those core facilities. So you get a breadth of knowledge and a variety not only of geographic locations across the country, but also of core facility infrastructure at our institutions. So we are happy to bring that to you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie.
Thank you. Okay, I promised I was only going to talk for 10 minutes, so I'm setting my timer. Because those of you who know me know that 10 minutes goes really quickly when I'm talking about something. So thank you again, as Ben said, for being here. We really appreciate you guys showing up at 4:30 today. We hope it will be interesting and exciting, and we do expect that there's going to be a lot of conversation at the end. We really hope we get some feedback from you, so please make sure you remember that this is, well, set your own timers to wake up in about 50 minutes or 60 minutes for the Q&A part, so we can have some good conversations. As Ben said, I'm at the Salk Institute. I've been there for the last 4+ years. I put on here some of my previous experience. I've been an ABRF member for many, many years, but I just put my other experience up here. UC Davis, UC San Francisco, University of Chicago for quite some time, and University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, just so to give you an idea of the breadth of problems that I've seen with regard to asset management or asset tracking. Some of it from when I was a technician in the core facility, and people would ask me where things were, all the way through developing into administrative team leader to try to understand why that asset tracking is important. I also want to acknowledge Alex Noble, who is our lab administrative manager in the cores. It's really her responsibility right now to manage our equipment inventory and all of the service contracting information that goes along with it. So I'm up here actually speaking mostly about her pain with regard to what she has to do, the questions that I ask of her to try to give us the information. But she's really the individual who is responsible for carrying the heavy burden. Got a couple of pictures of the Salk Institute up here. I don't know if any of you have been to the Salk Institute in San Diego. If you ever visit San Diego, let me know. I'd love to give you a tour. It's an architectural gem, apparently. Very well known worldwide. It sits on top of a cliff on top of the Torrey Pines Mesa, which looks out onto the Pacific Ocean. And twice a year, as you can see in the bottom photo, the sun sets exactly in line with what is called the River of Life, which is in the central courtyard of the Salk Institute. So spring and fall, right around the equinox, is a great time to visit too. But we got tons of pictures of it, so if you don't visit on that day, we can still show it to you. At the Salk Institute, as I said, we sit on top of the Torrey Pines Mesa. You can see the photo actually indicates, you can see some hang gliders in there. Those hang gliders at the glider port are very close to where the Salk Institute is. And on that mesa, well, below it is Black's Beach, which is a very famous surfing spot. But on that mesa, there are a number of research institutes. In addition to the Salk Institute, there's the Scripps Research Institute, which is larger than we are. They have about 250 to 300 faculty versus Salk Institute is an research institute of 50 faculty. We also have Sanford Burnham Prebys, which is about the same size as the Salk Institute. We have the La Jolla Institute for Immunology, and then right across the street from us is UC San Diego, which of course is a behemoth, which has a lot of technology and a lot of tools. And across this mesa, we work very closely together now to make sure that we're looking at ways that we can avoid redundancy and support researchers across all institutions. And so in that sense, the asset management tracking has become even more important for us in developing a database, a searchable database across all the institutions that we can be much more collaborative with. I just put a few things up here. These are, communications team always gives us Salk by the numbers so that everybody becomes familiar, a little bit more familiar with Salk. For those of you that are probably under the age of 40, the Salk Institute was founded by Jonas Salk, who developed the polio vaccine. A lot of people don't know who that is anymore, which is a good thing. I think it's okay that, you know, polio is almost been eradicated, but it is something that was developed, the organization was developed as a research institute, pure research institute, foundational research. We don't do clinical work. We have graduate students that are working in the laboratories, but they are UCSD graduate students. We don't have our own graduate program. So our faculty all have adjunct appointments at UCSD. So that's a little bit about us. This is our core facilities. As we indicated, we have 7. They're in, as you would expect, cellular technologies, microscopy, flow cytometry. We have a gene transfer and viral and targeting, gene transfer targeting and technologies, or therapeutics core, which is really a viral vector core that is utilized to some extent by our investigators in collaboration with our cell technologies and engineering core. Formerly called the stem cell core, does a lot of cell genetic manipulations, sometimes using viral vectors. We also have molecular technologies, so genomics, mass spectrometry focused on proteomics and metabolomics and lipidomics. And then we have our in vivo scientific services, which is basically behavior testing. So we just wanted to make sure we started by just defining what we're considering an asset for the rest of our conversation. And we're talking about physical equipment or instrumentation with a useful life of usually greater than 1 year, and it meets whatever your entity's cost capitalization threshold is. In most cases, that's $5,000, but at Salk, it's actually increasing to $2,000 soon. I mean, $10,000 soon. And we're talking about the asset life cycle. We thought it's not just about knowing when we get technology in or what we have on hand, but how do we get it in? How do we plan for it? How do we acquire it? Where do we get the funding? How do we record when it comes in? How do we maintain it? How we have, what kind of records do we have that are necessary for auditing? What's the visibility of that? How do we let people know that we actually have it? And what happens when we're done with it? How do we dispose of it, and how do we replace it? So you'll hear us talk a lot about different pieces of the asset life cycle, and each one of these pieces will have different reasons for needing to have a good asset management system. The stakeholders that need this kind of information are varied. There's researchers who need to know what we have. That includes our core scientists. It includes our PIs and all our trainees. We also have the administrative side of an organization that needs to know what we're doing with assets. That includes core administration. It includes our compliance office for audit purposes. It includes facility services for making sure that we have the right infrastructure to support those tools and where they are, and do we have the right HVAC, the right plumbing, that sort of thing. Procurement and finance, and then sponsored programs, which are our research accounting teams to know where our federal funding, if purchased by federal funding, is being used. At the intersection of these two is, I don't know if it's kind of small letters, but we're really focused on efficiency, accessibility, and protection of those tools. And that comes, that's the intersection of what both sides of the house need to think about. I'm going to talk just a little bit about what our functional requirements are. There are a lot of them. We brainstormed about these collaboratively in terms of what the functional requirements were when you're thinking about developing any system. And I think that's the first step in thinking about what it is that you need and what you want. So there's researcher perspectives. I'm not going to go through all of these. There's the core administrative perspectives, and then there's what we call the Office of Research perspective, or the administrative finance audit compliance side of the house. But there's lots of reasons for focusing on these different functional requirements. I'm going to go through just a couple of functional requirements that are really important, have become very important to me. These are all important. I think they're all important, but I want to just focus on a few. I'm going to tell you, these will help you see some of the challenges that I've encountered at Salk and at my previous institutions. And then Mary and Ben are going to give you solutions. Well, they're going to try anyway. I put a lot of pressure on them to come up with the solutions. It's very easy to define the problems, so that's why I'm talking first. But the things that are really important to me that we can't necessarily get out of our routine inventory system is purchase price, depreciation, and the source of the funding. When I came into Salk, we had a lot of technologies and assets already in the core facilities, but trying to find this information to do strategic planning with was very difficult for me. And that's one of the areas where I said, wow, we need to have a better system that tells me what we have, what kind of funding was used to purchase it, and what we think the depreciation or the life cycle is of that technology. The other thing that's become very important to me is maintenance. It's very important to all of you, I know that. But I have, over the years, probably over the last 30 years, developed very strong self-insurance models for maintaining my core facilities and the technologies within them. So that means, how do we track how well an instrument is performing? How much downtime there is? How many challenges have there been? How many times has it broken down? So in order to be able to do that and manage the asset appropriately, we have to track that in some way. And of course, our institutional tools for inventory don't track that. So what I want to do is just show you a couple of quick examples of what a particular challenge is, and then hopefully this may trigger some thoughts in your head about, wow, we know how we could solve that for you. I mean, we can talk about that at the end. I'm looking forward to hearing about that. But Mary and Ben will also come up with some suggested solutions as well. In this case, this is, I know this is probably very difficult to see, especially because everybody sits in the very back of the room. I don't know why that is. It always happens. But for those of you who can't see, I'll try to explain to you. What I have circled in red was an instrument that came in that actually is two separate instruments. So for those of you who can see it, it says a BD fax Canto flow cytometer with an influx system. An influx is a cell sorter. A fax Canto is a cell analyzer and went into our flow cytometry core. They were purchased at the same time, so procurement actually put them into when the instrument came in, when they did the processing, paid the invoice, they gave them one asset tag. So they combined these into one. Not very useful to me when I'm looking at our instrumentation. Also, you can see on this biannual inventory that we have to do, it also indicates location, right? Those two systems are in two separate places, right? And in fact, one of them doesn't even exist anymore because this is quite an antiquated entry, but they still exist on our inventory system. So this is one indication why we need to have a better system to track this. This works for whatever finance needs from their perspective, but it doesn't work for me in from a management perspective. We have another tool that also pulls our inventory into, and they say, well, if you don't like what you get out of the inventory module, look at reporting tool, which is a tool that was developed at Salk. And it also has a capital equipment inventory in it. And you can see what I've done is I've pulled out that same information for the BD Fax Canto 2 flow cytometer with influx system. And again, it doesn't give me the information that I need necessarily. It just recapitulates some of the information that was on the previous slide. So one of the reasons that I want to point out that some of this is very important to me is that what was in those inventory systems that you see at Salk were only equipment that when purchased, were purchased by the core facility. But at Salk, where the Institute purchases a lot of instrumentation by faculty or faculty funds or faculty-driven grants. That doesn't get assigned to the core facility. It goes into the core facility once we agree that it's appropriate to be in there. But it doesn't show up on my inventory. So we have a lot of equipment where if somebody just finance looks at our inventory and says, you have $10 million worth of equipment in the core, I can look at it and say, no, but you forgot about this, 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 and this, and we actually have $20 million of equipment in the Corps. And so this is really an important feature for me that I'd love to be able to see in an appropriate tool. This is how we do it. It's horrible. This is what Alex has to deal with. And I know you can't see this, but along the bottom here, there are 7 or 8 different tabs, one tab for each Corps facility in Excel. It's got all of the equipment listed that we know of in the facility. And every year, or more frequently, I go to the Corps directors and say, or Alex goes to the Corps directors and says, is this still accurate? Okay. It's very time-consuming, and we can't do a lot with the data. But this is just another example of what I've highlighted here on the fax, which is a Fax Symphony A5. You see that there's actually information missing. This was an instrument that was purchased with startup funds for a faculty member. So it actually shows up on their inventory, not ours. We never even got the primary asset tag. There's information that doesn't always get kept up to date. So these are real challenges for us in maintaining and managing the facility. And then we also, in the bottom panel, which you can't see very well, again, we track service contracts, whether we have things under service contracts or not. But we'd love to be able to not have to update this manually in Excel. We'd love to have a system that we can put it in. We know we can also add or have something that automatically adds incidents into our tracking system and can give us a report at any time with regard to how much downtime there's been or how systems have been problematic for us. If they've been problematic, then that helps us make a decision. Yep, we should buy a service contract. It's worth the risk, right? I mean, financially, it's going to be worth it. If we have an instrument that has no problems, hasn't been problematic for 2 years, I'm going to take the risk and self-insure it. Doesn't mean I won't fix it when it breaks, but it means that I won't buy an insurance contract on it, and I will self-insure that. So this is just some of the challenges that we see. I'm hoping that Mary's going to give you a little bit of insight into what they do at Montana State. And then Ben will do so after that, and then we'll come back for discussion. That's forward, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name is Mary Gauvin, and I have a fancy title. It sounds fancy, but I'm the Director of Corps Facilities at Montana State University. Montana State University is in Bozeman, Montana. Julie shared beautiful photos by the ocean of the Salk Institute, but I think that our aerial campus photo is equally as beautiful, even though it's not by the ocean. So we are nestled in the mountains in Montana, and if you ski, you probably know where Bozeman is, and if you've watched the show Yellowstone, you probably have at least heard of Bozeman. I think that they may have taken a little panorama of downtown at one point and put that in the show, but it actually wasn't filmed in Bozeman. So we have a centralized program at Montana State University. So I oversee our 12 Corps facilities, and I'm actually backed up by a fiscal manager who's the real rock star on our team, and she is here sitting in the front shaking her head no. But Emily Elias is the fiscal manager, so she assists with rate setting and budgeting and all things fiscal for our Corps facilities, which has been hugely beneficial for me. I have a little bit of imposter syndrome actually right now because I've only been in this role a little over a year, and there's so many veterans in the audience right now, so to get up here and tell you what we've been doing at Montana State University when you guys have been in these roles for 20 plus years is a little intimidating, but hopefully you guys can take some of these ideas that we're sharing and think about ways to implement them at your university if you are thinking about asset management. So here's just some stats. We agreed that we would just share some stats about each institution, so that way you can kind of identify with the one that makes sense with your institution and you can closely align with. So I put some fiscal year 25 statistics up there. I do have to point out we did win a football championship this past January. It was big news. We haven't won anything since the 80s, so I don't know if I'm supposed to use that logo, but the marketing team isn't here, so I put it on there. So you can see the numbers there. Our core revenue is 1.6 million, or it was last year. We have our 12 facilities. They're pretty standard, a couple of them, mass spec, NMR, microscopy. We oversee our animal resources facility as well, so all lab animal research is conducted there. Our applied research laboratory is where all classified research is done. We have a lot of DoD funding, so our ARL handles all classified research. Emily and I actually don't really oversee the ARL too much. There's just a lot of restrictions about how they can be advertised and talked about and everything. So technically we have 12 facilities within our program, but really it's 11. And I don't know what assets they have over there because it's probably all secret. So we also have a couple of more humanities-based cores. So that last one, it's a mouthful, but social data collection and analysis services. They do human subject surveying. We have a lot of rural health research that goes on in Montana because it's a very rural state. And so they assist with rural health surveys and work with the hospital systems, and they work with a lot of government, state and county to do surveys as well. So they don't really have a whole lot of assets, but they are one of our facilities. So resharing the functional requirements page here, all of these are important, as Julie said. I've highlighted the ones that we're kind of looking at on campus. I want to just stop and make a quick clarification. So Ben had shared the number of assets that we have at each university. I'm pretty closely aligned with Julie and what she has at Salk, but I've had the unique honor to be tasked with asset management of all research assets at Montana State University, which I'll explain why. And that number is over 1,000, so it's a little closer to what Ben has to manage. So this is within the core facilities, but also just across campus, all research assets. So knowing that information, this is what I'm interested in and trying to hone in on at MSU. So location and the contact, where is it? Do we know where it is? Is it in the basement? Has it been tagged? The utilization frequency, so we're really trying to maximize what we already have on campus rather than trying to purchase instrumentation that we already have. So if we have 10 qPCRs across campus and someone wants to buy another one, well, could they use one that we already have on campus? But first we need to know how many we have on campus. Where are they? Who do we contact? So we're not doing that really well at the moment. And then audit compliance. So making sure that when the DoD and the NSF come in and audit, that everything is accounted for and tagged and has been audited by our property management team once a year. We are really trying to tighten that up as well. And then the demand across disciplines and departments and startup requests. So I have been also overseeing instrument requests that are being funded by IDCs at Montana State University, which I realize isn't something that all universities can do as well, but we have a VPR that's a huge proponent for core facilities and understands the importance of making sure that we're maximizing what we have on campus, especially right now with federal funding uncertainty and less grants being awarded and all of that. IDC rates could change. So that's the other thing that we're interested in, is making sure that in order to review these startup requests or instrument requests, and if we're going to divert them somewhere else on campus to a resource we already have, again, we need to know what we have in order to do that. So I had some animation on the slide that Ben deleted. Just kidding, he didn't delete it. I don't know what happened to it. So I'm sorry, this is a little overwhelming to look at without the animation, but let's get through it. So this is our systems and then challenges. So our procurement software, I put Smart Buy because I actually try to avoid this at all costs. It's actually Jagger or Jaeger. Smart Buy is just what we call it at MSU. So I just want to clarify that. So when we have purchase orders for instrumentation, they should be coming through Jagger or Smart Buy. And then our asset management software that property management uses, and they currently oversee all assets, is AIM, or Asset Works, which I've heard great things about, and I've been trying to get in there myself, and it's been a hassle trying to get a license and get in there and see what are we looking at from the property management perspective. And then, like Julie, we also, within the core facilities, have these Excel spreadsheets that we try to maintain. We have information about our service contracts, and they're just cumbersome. They're large Excel spreadsheets, and then property management comes in. They're trying to audit. They don't know that we have these additional spreadsheets. The same question gets asked multiple times throughout the year. The core staff get frustrated, et cetera. So some of the challenges. The systems, our procurement software and our asset management software don't talk. I didn't even realize that it was possible for those types of platforms to talk until I think Ben had said that UNC's talk. And I was like, why aren't ours talking to each other? So when a purchase order is coming through, it gets automatically fed into the asset management platform. So that's currently not happening. So we have stuff that's being purchased. If the manager of property management is not CC'd on it in Smart Buy, they're missing things. So that's been a huge issue. And then the property management staff that we have, they're fabulous. They're so nice to work with, but they don't have research backgrounds. So when we go into a facility and look at assets together to make sure the tags are there, et cetera, they're trying to tag 18 things, and when really it should just be 2 things. They're, wondering where the tag is on the NMR, and why isn't it on the NMR? Well, it's on the controller box, because it can't be on the NMR, because there's magnets in the NMR. So they don't really understand the nuances of the research equipment that they're looking at and trying to manage, which isn't their fault. It's not their background, but it's been an issue with some of our facilities and the types of assets that we have. We've, like I said, historically just had some issues with the audit frequency and thoroughness, which isn't great when the auditors come around. And then redundancy in equipment purchases. So like all of you, I'm sure, can understand, we have PIs, they're young, they want that new mass spec in their startup package because it's free for them. They don't want to pay for the core facility, and so they're trying to get their own. And we can't track this really well if we don't know what we have to offer. We know how many mass specs are on campus, but when we're thinking about qPCRs and stuff, that becomes a little bit more tricky. So these are some proposed solutions, and again, I'm trying to talk to the audit compliance and the demand functional requirements here. So with the lack of background in research and then the audit frequency and thoroughness, we are in the process of actually employing a new asset manager that's going to report to me and within the Office of Research Development, and they're going to start overseeing, between the two of us, we're going to start overseeing all the research equipment in collaboration with property management. I understand that this isn't an option for all universities. Like I said, we've had some audit issues in the past. Our VPR is a big proponent of efficiency and how can we maximize that. So between those two things, that's kind of how we got the buy-in for this. And they're going to work closely with property management, make sure that they're working as a team, but they're going to be in our office. I'm actually in the Office of Research Compliance. They put my position in that office for some other strategic reasons, which I won't get into today. But so having us two in that office to assist and improve our audit preparedness will be huge for MSU. And then the redundancy in equipment purchases across campus. Like I said, when I'm reviewing these equipment requests, I have to know what we have in order to be like, hey, could you use this one? Or let's at least talk about it. I gave a talk on a town hall recently about core startups or the startup requests and core credits, which since I've been here at the meeting, a lot of people are looking at my face like, where have I seen this girl? I was on that town hall talking about this. So we are reviewing all these requests, and at the bare minimum, we just want to have a conversation with the researcher. We're not trying to, slap hands and be like, you can't have your own equipment in your lab. Obviously, there's situations where they're going to need it. Maybe they're going to manipulate that asset or instrument to meet their research needs, or it's going to be oversubscribed, reasons like that. So at the bare minimum, we just want to have a conversation with them and figure out, they might not even realize we have these other resources on campus, or maybe we can give them money to use in the mass spec core rather than buying a new mass spec for them that's going to sit there and be used 5% of the time, and they have no plan for the service contract and how they're going to maintain it, and who's going to create the SOPs for that and train new users. And then the most important one that I want to talk about today is we are going to be utilizing StrataCore's catalog feature, which is a new feature that's coming out with their new iteration of the platform, which is just being released now. I am not being paid by StrataCore to talk about this. They're all smiling in the back. But for real, I'm not being promoted, or I'm not being paid by StrataCore. So to showcase what research assets we have in a forward-facing way, so that way they're getting utilized and we're kind of avoiding this redundancy. We are going to be using their catalog feature. So when we did the demo with Jeff, he told us about the catalog, and I was already kind of like, I think I want PPMS, but then when he talked about this catalog, I was like, this is it. I want PPMS because this is great. We were, I kid you not, like 25 meetings deep with our IT trying to create a home-built searchable equipment database, which I naively thought was just an Excel sheet, and we'd embed it in a website page, and it'd be easy. And they were like, not having it. We're not going to do it. It was becoming very difficult. So when I realized this catalog feature was an option, I was sold. So the beautiful thing about the catalog feature, for those who have PPMS, this is a outward-facing feature, so you don't have to have an account with PPMS in order to look at this. So this is great for external users. They can look at this catalog and see what you have on your campus without having to make an account, and then maybe that's the hook, and then they'll contact you and start working with you. There is a tagging system with various filters, so you can easily search, if we tag things with microscope, they can just type in microscope and pull up all the microscopes that we have. There's an easy transition to the booking page, so the current users, they can just go on the catalog and be able to go transition right over to the booking screen. And then I just want to clarify that the searchable equipment database we were going to be trying to set up, this is good, not only core facility assets, but also individual PIs. We really want to work with the individual PIs, see what they have. If they have a $500,000 microscope sitting in their lab that's being underutilized, we want to be able to tell other PIs, with that PI's permission, to come in and utilize it, and rather than getting their own or outsourcing. So if we have that microscope on campus, even though it's not necessarily in a core facility, can we figure out a system so that way it can be utilized? So not only can the catalog be able to list all your core facility assets, but you can also add other assets. And I'm going to zoom in. This is an asset card. So you can put a detailed instrument description on there, so maybe unique ways that you can use that asset would be nice. You can put the contact on there, any dedicated technicians. And then the key thing is there's advanced privacy settings, like super advanced privacy settings. I think they got a little away from themselves with those settings, but it's great because with our core facilities, we want people to know where the assets are at because they're core facilities, they're like businesses, but with the individual PIs, we don't necessarily want to tell people, hey, this $500,000 microscope is in this lab in the CBB. So we just want them to be able to contact someone, and then they can start those conversations and figure that out. So that's great to have those advanced privacy settings. And then I put bonus feature at the top because to me this is a bonus feature. I didn't realize this was a thing. Obviously this was strategically created by Stratacore. But they have a asset life cycle feature that's part of this catalog feature. And it is, you can set it so that way only the administrators or your super admins are able to view this, obviously, so we don't want any user that's coming on to see this. But this is a way for us to track information about that asset. When was it procured, the date, information about the service contract, decommission information, maybe when there's maintenance that's done on it. You can also track depreciation, so you can set it, for example, 15% over 10 years. So this has been, we're in the middle of implementing Stratacore, so we have yet to actually launch this, but we're working to set up everything on the back end now so that way we can get it going here in the next month or two, and hopefully be able to track our assets a little bit better using PPMS. So with that, I will hand it off to Ben, who has even more options for you.
All right, hey everybody. I was told this would be on. There we go. I'm gonna stand over here because I can't stand still for 25 minutes and talk to you guys. So I'm gonna walk around a little bit. Quick show of hands, who in here at your institution has an asset tracking system that you feel confident in? Wow. We could have made this a 6-person panel. There's like 3 people that raised their hand. Another show of hands, who in here at your institution feels like they have a reliable method of tracking assets for their core facilities? Okay, a few more hands, that's awesome. Last question, Show of hands if you feel cramped in this room right now. All right, we got to talk to ABRF about getting us a bigger room next year. Okay, so we're going to talk about asset tracking. Julie and Mary have already provided a lot of great information about what they do at their institutions. I'm going to start out with kind of a funny story, anecdote. Over the past couple years, I guess since we started the Research Corps Development Initiative at UNC, our Associate Vice Chancellor for Research in a couple of meetings would throw out a few facts, and he would say, we have 46 mass specs on campus. And then the next month he may say, we have 33 mass specs on campus. And then he finally just started saying, like, we don't even know how many mass specs we have on campus. So that kind of started our realization that we needed to have some sort of formal asset tracking system, and specifically around and for our core facilities at UNC. So just to kind of paint the picture of the core facility landscape at UNC, we do have 140 cores, have about $45 million in annual operating expenses. Our cores provide services to over 2,500 unique customers within UNC, and our core facilities in fiscal year 2025 generated a total of $42 million in revenue. 33 of that was internal, and about 9 of that was external. Our core facilities provide services to over 2,100 unique sponsored programs, aka contracts and grants, at UNC throughout the year, and provide services to 200 plus organizations and over 100 organizations throughout the country. Just realized that our timer up here is not working. So what time is everyone's dinner tonight? 8? Do we have until 8? 7:45? 8? Megan, you can help me with that, maybe? Okay, awesome. So we do have a lot of wonderful people that help support our core facilities at UNC. And just a quick look at our core facility support infrastructure. We have the Research Corps Development Team, which is myself, Michael Akridge, who's a financial analyst who couldn't be here, and Megan Kraft, who is up here studiously in the front row. We also have the OSP Cost Analysis and Compliance Group. That is the group that officially reviews and approves rates for all of our core facilities at UNC. We have the Office of Research Technologies within our School of Medicine. This is Chris Gregory and Kara Clissold. Kara's here. I think Chris is hosting another presentation right now. They do a lot of great work in providing financial and non-financial support to not only School of Medicine core facilities, but also kind of adjacent to School of Medicine core facilities. And we also have some support teams in our Lineberger Cancer Center, as well as our College of Arts and Sciences. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about what the Research Corps Development Team does. The probably unscannable QR code is here. There's also a link to our webpage if you want to know more information about what we do. But our strategy really boils down to 3 key goals. It's going to be really bad for you guys when he resets this timer and it says 90 minutes on it. It's going to be a lot of talking. Our strategy really boils down to 3 key goals. We want to reduce administrative burden, promote good science, and deploy resources productively and efficiently. Successfully tracking assets held at core facility really falls into all 3 of these buckets, or they really help us meet all 3 of these goals. We can reduce administrative burden by increasing the ease and convenience at which folks can find this information. We promote good science by making more strategic and better informed decisions about where we need to invest our funds and in which equipment we need to invest our funds. And it helps us deploy resources productively and efficiently because we have a more holistic view of what our assets look like at UNC. And again, we can make more informed decisions about where we want to invest those funds. So just a quick look at the core facility asset landscape at UNC. Again, we have 140 core facilities. As Chris Gregory said earlier, we don't say that as a humble brag. It's not really a positive thing. We have a few too many. But just providing that here to provide some context that gathering all of this information across all of those cores spread out around a bunch of different departments and a bunch of different schools was extremely difficult. Have we done a perfect job at it? No, but if we can do it, most institutions can probably do it as well. So our cores have over 1,100 assets belonging to 73 cores in 40 different departments, located in 40 different buildings, strewn all about campus. I did not include a picture of our beautiful campus in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, but trust me, it's way prettier than the Salk Institute and way prettier than Bozeman, Montana, okay? If anybody's been there, they can attest to that. It's very flat and a little yellow this time of year. Yeah, that's very true. The total purchase value of all the assets held at our core facilities was $57 million with an average asset value of $54,000. And we have over 580 assets that are over 10 years old. It's a red flag for us. It's a story for a different day. Another reason why I put this information up here is that it took me about 90 seconds to put this information together. If we did not have an asset database, it would have taken me 6 months to put this information, and I would probably have lost my job in the process. That would have been an extremely difficult thing, but we have the reporting capabilities in our asset database. We have all these assets. How do we keep track of this? In the middle of the picture here, this is Michael Akeridge. He's a financial analyst on our team. We're very fortunate to have him. He has a lot of experience and background in asset management and procurement, and he was really kind of the technical side of things to keep this moving forward, keep our asset database moving forward. On the right is Megan Kraft. She's confident. She keeps us pointed in the right direction. She knows where we're going. On the left is me, freaking out, sweating bullets, thinking, how in the world are we going to get all this done? So very fortunate for Michael and Megan for making this happen and keeping us on the right track. So our solution to that was a core facility asset database. We knew we wanted to create an asset database. We didn't know how exactly we wanted to go about doing that. So as Mary mentioned, there are third-party external companies that provide this service. We did look at a few of those, but ultimately we decided to build this in-house. And one of the main drivers of that decision was we're very fortunate enough to have the Office of Research Information Systems within our Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research at UNC, who we could leverage to actually create and code and build this asset database. We had to go to them and tell them what we wanted, right? So we felt it was very important to boil this down to a few simple things that we wanted. So A, we could explain it to the coders who knew nothing about core facilities and next to nothing about assets. But also that we could avoid scope creep. You know, anytime you start developing a system, 6 months from now, it does 4 times as many things as it was supposed to do when you started building it. So we wanted the ability to assign assets to core facilities. This was our number one priority. I think Julie mentioned accounting systems. And most of the time, oftentimes at institutions, our accounting systems don't adequately track assets to the extent that we want them to. And a glaring example of that was our accounting system did not assign assets to core facilities. So that didn't help us out at all. We wanted the ability to report. We wanted the ability to quickly and easily create reports to gather the information to create metrics. We had particular access requirements. So we have rolled this out to all of our core facilities across campus. So all of our core directors, some or most of our core staff have access to the asset database. But the core directors only have access to the assets that are assigned to that core. So we wanted the ability to tailor the access to make sure that only the people that we want to look at specific assets can see those assets. We also wanted an information feed from UNC's accounting system. So there was a ton of information in our accounting system that we knew that we could use kind of as the foundation for what was in our asset database. So we wanted that feed there. And we wanted it to be convenient to update information. We didn't want people to have to jump through a bunch of hoops to update information because the asset database is only as good as the data inside of it. And if the information inside of it is not getting updated, then the asset database is essentially useless. So what information do we actually need? There are several fields here. I think most of this will be pretty self-explanatory and probably pretty similar across institutions. But I just wanted to highlight a few of these. So the first is responsible person and custodian. So our accounting system assigned a custodian to each asset, but oftentimes, most of the time, this was like a departmental asset custodian, right? They were they were responsible for managing the assets of an entire department. It could be hundreds of assets at one time. They didn't have intimate knowledge of those assets. They may know where they were, right? But they weren't using them day to day. They didn't know the specific details that we were concerned with these assets. So what we did is, in our database, we assigned a responsible person to these assets. And this, most of the time, would be the core director. It's the person who is using this piece of equipment every day, has intimate knowledge of what is required to manage and maintain that piece of equipment. And ultimately, if we are wanting to know about that piece of equipment, this is the person that it would be beneficial to reach out to. Life expectancy is another one. So UNC is a state of North Carolina institution, so we have to follow the state of North Carolina asset management policies and regulations. One of those regulations is that all assets have to have a consistent useful life based on kind of the asset category that that piece of equipment or asset falls into. So for example, if you have a car, all cars in North Carolina are depreciated or have a useful life of 8 years or 10 years or whatever it is. Scientific equipment for us all had to have a useful life of 15 years for depreciation purposes. We know that's not realistic, so we wanted to actually store the expected life expectancy. I think that's redundant. But we wanted to share the estimated life expectancy of the piece of equipment. So we would actually know, hey, this piece of equipment is going to be relevant and useful for the next 5 years or 7 years, 8 years, whatever it is. The last thing I'll highlight here is we have a flag to denote whether the asset is purchased with contracts and grants or with federal funds. As you guys know, if you can't include depreciation in your rates if the piece of equipment is purchased with federal funds, so we wanted a flag in our database so we could quickly pull that out and quickly flag that information. We also, I'm not going to go too much into detail in it. We do have a lot of time left, but people have to go to dinner. We do store service contract information in the database as well. So that's a big part of why we wanted to develop and create this database, to store service contract information, not only for planning purposes, but to potentially increase our bargaining power and negotiating power when it comes to lumping all those contracts together with a particular vendor. So we know what information we want. We know what we want in the database. That's half the battle. How do we gather all of this information, right? The question that we ask ourselves is this information currently available somewhere? We don't want to recreate the wheel if we don't have to. Is there somewhere that we can go to get this information? I mentioned before, our accounting system, while it did have gaps and did have some deficiencies, laid a really good foundation of information that we could use in our asset database. So that was kind of our number one place to get information. The next was our rate review documents. So at UNC, our rate documents, the fancy Excel spreadsheet that cores use to calculate their rates, right, requires some asset information. So we said, hey, that's a good spot to get information from. So we gathered information from those rate review documents. I'm going to say the S word, survey. All right. I know it's a hot topic. I know it's a hot topic around here. We did send out, thank you. I got you. Thanks. We did send out information to our core facilities, but we made it as easy for them as possible. So we sent out the information that we had and said, hey, can you confirm that this is correct? Or can you update or change this? Or if you have a new asset, let us know. If anything is missing, let us know. But we didn't require them to start from square one, right? So the big question is this information readily available? If it is, where is it and how do we get it? Or do we have to compile it and put it together? And if so, where do we get it? I did include a screenshot of our asset database. I realize it's probably worthless to everyone except the folks in the first 5 rows, but this is what our asset database looks like. This is kind of the primary screen. There's just one asset listed here. It's a test asset, so not all of the fields are filled in, but we have different search criteria that we can use to report on. We can search by department or core facility, whatever we need. We can essentially search on any field in the asset database, and that's something that's important to us and something that was important that we communicate to Oris when they were creating this and building this for us. This is the view when you drill down into a specific asset. A lot of information here. One of the really helpful things is we were able to break this up into tabs, so you don't have just a ton of information on one page to go through. So we were able to break this up into tabs. We have a barcode and a QR code for inventory purposes. We haven't gotten there. I don't know that we will get there, but we do have the capability to do that if we want. Again, you have the department, the manufacturer. In the gray bar at the bottom are some calculated fields. So these are the fields that the database will calculate for us based on the information. One of those things that you'll see is total ownership cost, which is something we'll talk about in just a moment. So, what are some challenges and opportunities? How do we keep information up to date and relevant? Again, the database is only as good as the information within it. So how do we make sure that it's being kept up to date? One of those I mentioned previously was the accounting system. We're going to feed things into the accounting system. We have a nightly feed from our accounting system into the asset database. So if, for example, a core facility purchases a new asset that gets tagged and entered into the asset system today, then it will show up in the asset database tomorrow. The other way that we can keep information that's up to date is by utilizing and leveraging our rate documents from our core facilities. So our core facilities have to have a rate review every 2 years at UNC. Many of them have rate reviews more frequently than that. So that's kind of a touch point for us where we can take the information from their rate development worksheet and compare it to what's in the database to make sure that our information is up to date. I mentioned total cost of ownership. Sorry, I'm not good at math. But that's not right. Oh, okay. I'll hurry. Okay. We have total cost of ownership, which was not previously calculated for assets at UNC, but this is very helpful for us and could be for other institutions as well. So essentially, this is the total cost that it takes to own that piece of equipment. So it's total purchase price and a price of any service contracts, and then the cost of any out-of-pocket repairs or maintenance over the life of the asset. So when you have a PI or faculty member that comes to you and says, hey, I want to buy this piece of equipment, it's $400,000, just give me $400,000, I'll go to my lab, you'll never hear from me again. Well, we can point to a similar instrument that was purchased for $4,000, but may have a total cost of ownership of $650,000, right? So you can go to that faculty member and say, well, you're $250,000 short. What's your plan to make this actually a sustainable piece of equipment, a sustainable purchase? We collaborated very closely with purchasing and our asset management offices. I would encourage you, if you're going to embark on this adventure, become very close friends with them, buy them coffee, donuts, pizza, whatever you need to do, as well as the Information Technology Services Office, which was our central ITS group at UNC. We did have a situation, just kind of forewarning, about our institutional book of records. So when we were having conversations with our central ITS group, they brought up concerns surrounding data governance, that we were somehow or possibly impacting the official institutional book of record by having a supplementary system over here that was not in our accounting system. I don't know that we ever came to a conclusion. We kind of just did what we wanted to do anyway. But it helped to explain to them that, hey, our institutional book of record is still our accounting system. The asset database over here is just utilizing information from that system, and we're using it to store additional information that's not required to be in our accounting system. And there's another advantage to that, being that we're going to have more visibility on these assets. And if we see something or get news that something needs to be updated in the accounting system, we'll let you guys know, right? We'll either change it or go through the necessary process to change it. So it's kind of advantages in both directions, and that helped them feel a little bit more comfortable with that. So how do we incentivize core directors to participate in this and provide information for this? Communication, communication, communication. I think we were communicating this to the core directors 2.5 years ago that we were going to create an asset database, which is a little annoying for the core directors because they kept asking about it. But when it does come, they know it's here, and they expect it, and they know exactly what it's going to do. Also, when it comes to communication, communicate the advantages of that system. There's a couple of them here. For the sake of time, I won't go through all of them, but it's very important that we communicate why it is beneficial, not only for us at the central office level, but it can be beneficial for our core facilities as well. And it helps that our core facilities have access to this asset database so they can use it for their purposes as well. So what do we do with the information? The last kind of structural question was what? What are we going to do with this? So obviously we're going to use it for strategic planning. I mentioned having the actual expected life in the database. We can use that to inform institutional investment, right? Where do we need to put our money? What pieces of equipment may be going offline soon, and what do we need to plan for moving forward? We can increase bargaining power with our vendors. Maybe we need to make a multi-equipment purchase, or we need to bundle service contracts with the same vendor. That will help us get better deals from those vendors. It's going to help decrease internal competition. We always talk about either cores cannibalizing one another or a faculty member buying a piece of equipment that takes away demand from one of our core facilities. Shout out to Megan. She established an equipment review process in which OVCR must approve any equipment purchase over $100,000. So she worked with our procurement team to say, hey, if you see a requisition come through for a piece of equipment over $100,000, send it to me, send it to the OVCR, and we have to approve it before it will move forward. So we can analyze that piece of equipment and understand, how does this affect our core facilities? Should this go into a core facility? Should we stop this, or is it okay? This also, we're helping to make some improvements to our rate review process. We haven't fully flushed this out yet, but if the asset information can be utilized in a rate review process so our core directors don't have to dig up all that information every time they do a rate review, right? So it'll reduce the administrative burden for them. Somewhere down the road, we're going to use this asset database to automate the rate review process and rate creation process. That will be ABRF 2036 probably, but we'll be there. And this will help with marketing, right? Internal and external. Not only with identifying pieces of equipment that we can include, use of those pieces of equipment that we can include in recruiting packages, but also marketing to our internal and external customers. We're working right now on a portal that we're going to put on our webpage that will interface with the asset database so that both internal and external customers can search for equipment and understand, where the location is, much like what Mary was sharing with StrataCore. So, sped through some of that. This is our contact information, at least at UNC, on the RCD team. Also put the contact information for Chris and Kara at the Office of Research Technologies. We're happy to chat about any of this, so feel free to reach out. And then also have the contact information for my wonderful co-presenters, Julie and Mary. I know they are also happy to chat. So send us an email, and we'll be happy to talk. If anybody has any questions, you can come up to the mics. Again, don't incriminate yourself because we are being recorded, but we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you, guys.
Awesome talk. Thank you very much. Actually, my comments are going to combine all three of you. Basically, we built very similar to what Ben is doing at North Carolina about 10 years ago at Florida State, and it ties all the things you talked about. The thing you talked about, Julie, equipment having two additional things. We see that in the way in which we built about in 2016 at Florida State is we got the information from the controller's office, and where they have an equipment, but they usually tag the FSU tag with one equipment with added value added to it. Therefore, when you scan that, there is only one equipment showing up rather